Hi there, I'm Gerald Lopez. Welcome to this first interview of the series Aikido Off the Mat. In this video series, we talk to Aikido practitioners who have integrated their practice such that they have taken Aikido out into the community in the form of workshops, talks, and other training and education that helps people understand and practice concepts and tools derived from Aikido. To launch the series, I thought I would invite someone I have a long history with. In fact, we started Aikido in the early 1980s in England, almost at the same time. We have practiced together, sipped beer together, done the crazy 80s dances after seminars, and generally had a laugh together. We became teachers and started our dojos and continued meeting at the seminars taught by our teacher, Ken Williams. But in around 1993, we parted ways when I left the UK for Malaysia and when I quit Aikido altogether. 25 years later, in 2018, I had the urge to start Aikido again. By some twist of fate, we reconnected through the COVID-19 lockdown, and we even did an online Aikido global event together. I would like to introduce Quentin Cooke, 7th Dan, sensei of the Burwell Aikido Club in the UK. After reaching 4th Dan in Ken Williams's key federation of Great Britain, Quentin got itchy feet and set out to new pastures. I will let him tell you his story, but suffice to say, he has been active promoting Aikido globally, not only on the mat, but through books, organizations, and even business training, for which, as a financial services consultant, he is well qualified to do. Quentin and his brother Piers founded Aikido for Daily Life in 2004, a democratic multi-style association of independent dojos. So, Quentin, welcome on the show. And we talked about when you started Aikido, 1984 or so. How did you start Aikido? Tell me about, how you got started.
Oh, that's very simple. My brother Piers started Aikido before I did. And I think he was around blue belt, maybe brown, when he went off to help open a new club. So a new club needs new students. And on the first night, how do you populate it? Well, you get your family and friends to show up.
Right.
So he did a good selling job on me, saying he thought I'd love it and that I should turn up. So being supportive of family, I decided I would give it a go. And that's how I started.
Wow. That's funny because Piers got me started too. I went to this Mind, Body, Spirit festival in London. There's all those crystals and essential oils and meditation places and whatever. And there was Piers, representing the London key clubs. And he explained about the unbendable arm and, 1 point and stuff like that. I was suitably impressed. And so I joined.
Well, there you go.
Yeah, there you go.
It was similar for me. So on that first night, they're doing that sort of thing. And I'm thinking, what the hell's going on here? And not really understanding how on earth it would work. It lit my curiosity. And actually, I've been curious ever since.
Yes. Oh, well, good on you. So you were, your main, some people come to Aikido with these amazing motives and expectations, but I suppose you came to it kind of just tagging along almost, basically. Would you say that?
Yeah, I think that's true.
Although he'd probably been talking about it before to you, and so you'd created some expectation.
Not that much, actually.
No?
And I think it was more just literally just supporting the family. And then when I arrived, thinking, hang on, this sounds very much like how I think anyway. I did have my own philosophy for life.
Right.
I'd actually thought about that from quite a young age, what I thought the purpose of life was and what I wanted to do. And it just meshed perfectly with that. Wow. So it made it easy to form a relationship with it.
Yes. Yes. Cool. And did you find that, as you sort of got into the practice, the philosophy kind of, it kind of integrated even more so?
Do you know what? The philosophy's never changed.
Yeah.
Never changed. From
Yeah.
about the age of 10, I should think.
Right. Wow.
But my understanding of it and the subtleties definitely, well, just growing all the time, really. It's just so deep.
Yeah.
So deep.
Yeah. That's cool. So, so you practiced, you went through the grades and got first dan, and at some point you decided to teach, right? And possibly, well, maybe you taught with your brother's club, and eventually thought of starting your own setup, right?
Well, actually, so my first teaching experience was at my first club, which was with Bob Fletcher.
Right.
And
Yeah.
there would be occasional nights where he wouldn't show because he'd work or whatever.
Yeah.
And even as a blue belt, I remember taking some lessons.
Okay.
I think illegally within the key fed at that time, because it had to be a brown belt.
I won't tell on you. Yes.
But yeah, I did start teaching then. And then Piers went to open his club, and I would spend a night with Bob and a night teaching at Piers's club.
Yeah.
Or a night with Piers teaching and a night where I taught.
Yeah.
And then eventually my job took me away from that part of the world up to Cambridge in the UK.
Right. Right.
And really, I was faced with a desert. There weren't any key-fed clubs up here. And I went and sampled the local Iwama club and left them at black and blue thinking, well, I've trained for about 15 years and I've never been black and blue before. So that wasn't for me. So I decided I'd better start my own club. Right. And about 6 months after moving, I did that. And I've been open ever since.
Cool. Amazing. So
it's about 28 years now. I think I've been, the club's been open about 28 years.
Wow. That's awesome. So at what point did you start thinking of taking Aikido off the mat? See it, the possibilities further out.
Okay, well, I think it starts in small ways. So I think that I was taking it off the mat in some sense all the time, because I always saw it as a gift to students that would help them become more confident and find themselves better than they were on their own.
Yes.
It was a tool of discovery for them. So I was already making a difference there, at least I believe I was. And certainly doing it in my own personal life, with family and in my business and relationships generally. But I suppose the big seminal change was when a guy called Mark Walsh, who used to occasionally visit my club in the summer, told me about this group called Aiki Extensions, which was all about taking Aiki into the world. And he said, I think this is really for you, having been to your class. And, I'd like you to be on the committee for the UK because it was based in the States.
Right.
And I said, well, okay, I'll think about it. But inevitably I did. Before I knew it, I was on the main board in the States, and again, I've been at it ever since. It's been, and there are so many world-class teachers that I've been involved with as a result of that. Many of which share this philosophy of taking Aikido out into the world. So I've kind of developed it from there.
Right. And so when you started taking it off the mat, what did you see as, well, apart from instilling it in your students so that they were able to practice it in daily life, which was pretty much, I suppose, the way we were learning it ourselves, as Q grades. But and then you got involved with Aiki Extensions. So what sort of activities and what did you see, could be happening? In what ways could it help communities and people in different places?
Okay, well, let me just come back to the Aikido in daily life bit.
Yeah.
And I'll talk about how Aiki Extensions broaden that horizon, if you like. I think we learned very important principles within the Key Fed that were very helpful for daily life.
Yeah.
But actually, we never really said, and this is how you would use it in this context. It was just, you had to make that leap yourself. So people talk centering and relaxation, and kind of assumed you would know when to use it and how it might apply in a difficult situation in daily life. But it was never spoken about. Well, I talk about it all the time. I will always say, and when you're in an argument with your son, or you're discussing things with your boss, or you're faced with a crisis of some sort, this is when this skill will be particularly useful to you.
Yes.
So I think as teachers, we need to be more obvious about the power that Aikido has to help you in daily life. So coming back to Aikido Extensions was doing things like supporting slum kids in Sao Paulo, who are surrounded by drug barons and have no positivity in their life. But the Aikido teacher there was allowed to go in and offer classes. And that would seem to me an incredible thing to do. Yeah. We were putting Palestinians together with Israelis on the mat, organizing events where they could learn that actually they were the same. Yeah. They had the same needs, and they could find a relationship between them. Yeah. We were opening a dojo in Ethiopia, which had never been done before. Again, dealing with very poor people who had very little in their lives and giving them something a bit more positive to focus on. And it was projects, and there was another one, Aikido in the schools, training across borders, which is this sort of putting warring people together and getting them to train together. There's another one, Peace Camp International, where we bring kids from Palestine and Israel to a sort of American-style summer camp and get them to play nicely over the summer with Aikido training thrown in. This was all, I thought, wonderful work, and showed how Aikido could be taken into daily life. A lot of the people on the board, a friend of mine, Paul Linden, were doing incredible work in counselling with abuse victims or anybody who had issues, really. And he was taking that directly from Aikido. So it became just more and more obvious the power of how we could use this in all spheres of life.
Yes, fantastic. So, what have you done yourself apart from Aikido Extensions? You started doing a few projects of your own too, haven't you?
Yes. So what have I done? Well, firstly, being a part of the Aikido Extensions, I think is really important. Yeah. So I am constantly working with the team there and networking and pushing this message all the time. So it's not my income comes from a financial services business. I haven't made it my profession, but my unpaid job is promoting Aikido and the type of Aikido that we're talking about here today. I put together a book of stories called A Way to Reconcile the World, which showed how people, whether they'd studied for 3 months or 40 years, could tell wonderful stories about how when a crisis came along, Aikido made the difference. And I don't mean people, attacking them in a car park. I mean in real life situations. So just hoping to inspire students that this was what Aikido could do for you, rather than, oh, look, you'll be able to beat people up if they attack you. Yeah. And obviously working in the dojo, trying to encourage people to take that message out there to the world. But latterly, I created a business called the Business Dojo. My financial services business has given me a really good life, and it's allowed me the time to do the things I wanted in Aikido for nothing. But it's not my passion. I quite enjoy it in some respects, but it's not my passion. Aikido is my passion, and I wanted to work in a way that I could be passionate about. So I've created a training and coaching business called the Business Dojo, and it's aimed at going into businesses and taking the principles of Aikido into business, because they're very powerful and help them effectively to be more moral, but also make more money at the same time. Yeah. Which seems to me to be very good for society, because we all need business. We all need to make a living. But I think in the modern era, people don't look long term, and we have to reverse trends like making a fast buck at the cost of the environment or the cost of staff, churning staff over, burning them out, having no respect for them or their families, and treating people as people, not as commodities. And I think if you do that, you're rewarded, maybe not quite as quickly, but your business becomes much more sustainable. You have less turnover of staff, you have less sickness, you create better relationships between the staff, you create better relationships across the teams, you create better relationships with clients, and all of that feeds into the business.
Over here in New Zealand, we talk about multiple bottom lines, not just the profit one, but also environmental, social, and cultural, I think it was. And we also talk about ethical business and sustainable business. And we also talk about health and safety of staff in terms of managing stress and coping with crises and things like that. So it sounds to me like that this is very much in that category of business of the future.
I don't think they're exclusive. I think they're inclusive, and they're all aligned. But I think people have lost sight of that.
Yes.
It's like when you parent a child, you need to be consistent in how you do that. Hopefully, positively consistent. Because if you're angry this second and but I love you the next, they get very mixed messages, and they don't really, and they get very confused, and it doesn't help to have a well-adjusted child. And I think it's the same in business. You need to have good values and be consistent about applying them right across the business. And in the end, that rewards you hugely. And my validation for that is that firstly, I have a financial services business. I employ these principles within my own business, and it's been very successful. It's given me a very good living during my life.
Yes.
I apply those same rules in my family. Well, I've been married for 34 years. I've got 2 children who are well adjusted, never been on drugs, all got top quality marks at school. I never had to push them hard. Now, that may be complete luck, but I think it's got something to do with parental guidance as well. And in the club, everybody gets treated the same. So I have more women than most other clubs. And I have a huge age range. I think my oldest member now is about 87, and I've had them down to about 6 or 7. I think that diversity shows that they all get looked after. That's how I want to be treated. I want to be looked after. So I want to treat people the same.
So, so through that process of being involved in that education, do you have any stories or any experiences that really stand out for you of how people? If you read the storybook, there are some incredible stories in there of events that happen to people that I can't match. My experiences are not that dramatic. But I did have a couple of stories in the book. One is actually how I came to write the book, because it was almost like the fates pointed me at this, and this incredible series of events happened that led me to say, okay, I'll put this book together. And that was quite a story. And I am I think if you push in a certain direction, you don't always know what the result's going to be, but things start to happen. Yes.
So some people would say, well, it's just complete luck. But for me, it was part of the fact that I was involved with Aiki extensions and really trying to help other people and networking that this whole story began. So nothing dramatic that I can tell. But just, I think my life has been shaped by it.
Yes. I would go as far as to probably propose that you probably have changed people's lives dramatically, but perhaps haven't realized it, because I think that these principles and practices do change some people's lives tremendously. And it may be such that they haven't come back to you, or you haven't seen it, yourself. But, I think that often happens, And,
I think that's undoubtedly true. And although I think there's some truth in what you say, I do have students come back who tell me, wow, you made a big difference for me. And even if they're not training on the mat, I can think of students that I know I've made a big difference to their lives. And they're those wonderful moments that inspire you and keep you motivated to keep doing what you're doing. Because you're right that they're rare, but they do happen. And I always explain it like, well, someone lit my candle, and now I'm going around hopefully trying to light candles. And sometimes the candles might burn very brightly, and sometimes they might be quite dim, but you make a difference. And even that small difference ripples out to the ones that they know. So, if I make a difference to my students, it makes a difference to their families and their businesses.
Yes.
And maybe you can't measure it, but neither can you measure how one drop of rain ends up being an ocean.
Yes.
And I gave up trying to create an ocean a long time ago. I know I'll never be around to see that. But I think I should be part of the process that starts at least making a puddle. And see where that goes.
Do you think it's in line with, the founder of Aikido, Morihei Ueshiba? He said a few times, I think, that, Aikido, my vision, his vision for Aikido is as a tool or as an implement of peace in the world. And do you think that this thing of you having had your candle lit and then lighting people's candles is part of that vision? You are continuing the vision, would you say?
Absolutely. So it's not my brilliant idea. I'm just passing the message on. And actually, I think Aikido is just a very powerful way of transmitting ancient principles that have been around for thousands of years. One of the interesting things about taking Aikido off the mat is that you have to find ways of communicating the principles of Aikido without doing wrist locks and throwing people around, because that's just not acceptable in a business setting. But you have to give people the power of the principle in a way that is acceptable. So yes, I think that it was O-sensei's vision, and my touchstone is he said he thought Aikido was a way to reconcile the world, and that's my phrase. That's the one that I always live by, or try to. And I think that's the sadness in Aikido, that actually that message has been lost. A lot of people don't see it as that's the purpose of Aikido, but the founder said it. And people are entitled to walk their own walk and go down their own paths, but maybe they shouldn't call it Aikido if they're not aligned with the purpose of Aikido.
Yes. Yeah. So how have you found, how have you dealt with the language of Aikido? Because we received a particular language, and we know that that language can't be used out in the community because it doesn't make any sense. So how did you find that process of re-languaging or interpreting?
So I suppose the first thing I ought to admit is that I'm a bit of a rebel. So I dare to think my own thoughts and do things my own way.
Yes.
And I think one of the problems with Aikido is that we have this hierarchical structure, and basically in many associations the message comes down, you do it as your teacher told you. You don't dare to think and do it differently. And that means that however they communicate it to you is how you communicate it to others. And actually I think it becomes like a faded photocopy, because the student never remembers 100% of what the teacher told them.
Yes. So
over time lots of the message gets lost. And I saw that problem just as you've described it, that we use these phrases that like keeping one point or extending ki, which means nothing to anybody when they first come on the mat. And I try to teach in a way that I only use language that's meaningful. So I won't talk about keeping one point. I'll talk about being centered, and I will give examples of what being centered means, and I will let people experience what it is to be centered compared to not being centered. And then maybe at some point I'll say to them, and that's sometimes called keeping one point. And it's the same with extending ki. I will say, well, focus on that point out there, or use your curiosity to feel what you're feeling now, or put your intention on that particular spot. I'll use words like that people understand in England, at least. Yeah. And once they've got that and they've experienced what a difference that makes in their body, I might then say, and we sometimes describe that as extending ki. That use of coordinating mind and body produces this result, and that's what you're feeling now. Yes. And that's using ki, if you like. Yes. So I work really, really hard at the language I use, because students are very absorbent. And if you say push, that's exactly what they'll do. So it becomes a physical action. It's got nothing to do with mind and body coordinated. It's to do with physical force. So I won't use the word push or pull. I'll use things like extend or draw them towards you, things like that. So they get the idea of what I'm talking about. And if they then push, I can say, I didn't ask you to push. I asked you to extend. Yeah. It's different. Feel the difference. So yes, I work very carefully at language.
Right. So yes, you've talked about language, but while you were explaining language, you also talked a lot about feeling, about the body. Yeah. So there's something about feeling and about doing something with the body that you have a particular idea around. How do you think that compares with the normal ways of, say, presenting business workshops or whatever?
Absolutely. You know? This is the USP, if you like, of Aikido. So why is Aikido a powerful way for learning these principles that can help us be better human beings? Because the whole point of practicing with a martial art is that you're being put under incredible stress. Someone's trying to knock your head off or punch you or grab you or push you or whatever it is. They're attacking you physically. And for most of us, especially in modern life, that's not part of our daily experience. It is stressful. It's our worst nightmare, really. So learning to be relaxed and compassionate at times like that is the hardest thing to do. And if you react in the normal way to fear, then you find it's a very ineffective solution. So it might be aggression or fear that you feel when you're attacked. And you can very quickly learn that they're not very effective solutions to resolving things. Whereas if you act with relaxation and compassion, you produce this wonderfully positive result that saves you, but also saves the person that you're attacking. And I think we're looking for win-win situations. Why is it so powerful? Because you feel it. You feel it. It's a physical process, and you can feel the strain of pushing and pulling and aggression and retracting, collapsing versus pushing back. Whereas when you just flow with the movement, you feel how easy things become. So there's an embodied experience there. Now, I can tell you that sticking your hand in a fire is going to hurt. And you might believe me and you might never do it. But if you do it, you definitely will never do it again. So that embodied experience is far more powerful than me saying, oh, by the way, if you stick your hand in a fire, it's going to hurt. And this is the same. So if you experience learning through your body, it's a real experience for you. It sticks. You know why doing it this way is more powerful than doing it that way. And that's why Aikido is so brilliant.
Excellent. So have you seen Aikido change over time as a on the mat practice and outside? Because I kind of missed out a little bit. I was in a bit of a vacuum for 25 years. What do you think has changed?
I don't think it's changed for me. But I'm not sure the Aikido world generally has changed. I think there was always this large universe of different styles and ways of practicing. some of which I like and some of which, frankly, I think are sending the wrong message. And as I've stuck my head out of the window, because you'll recall within the KIFEV, we weren't really allowed to practice with any other organization. I didn't even know any other Aikidos existed, to be honest. I genuinely didn't. So it came as a real shock when I left the KIFED to find that there was this huge world. And the more I practice, the more people I meet, the more different styles I see. So I wouldn't say that they've changed. I've just become aware of the differences that are out there. I think the one big change is not so much the practice, but the people that come to it. We are seeing less people come to Aikido, less young people coming. And I think there are a lot of reasons for that. But it's, yeah, that's the main difference.
Yeah. I mean, one of the big changes, I suppose, in the world is the rise of social media and YouTube. So we have more access to different styles of Aikido, and we can critique or criticize different people doing their Aikido on YouTube. But what it seems to me that when I came back, I was quite shocked when I came back to see the amount of criticism going on, you know, and also this feeling that, even the statements people are talking about, discussing why is Aikido no longer relevant? You know, what do you think of that narrative?
Well, I think, firstly, it's a sadness to me that in Aikido, the art of harmony, you don't see much harmony. So that just shows me that people haven't understood what it's all about. And I can't do anything about that. I can only do something about me. And it's about its relevance for me and those that I care about. Not anybody else. I can't do anything about other people. I can only, if it's doing good for me, then that's why I train.
Yeah.
And I do that because I believe it does good for others as well.
Yeah.
So that's the message I choose to get out there.
Yeah.
I work quite hard at getting my message out there, increasingly hard actually, and it's it'll either be accepted and people will learn from it, or they won't. And I've been the victim of one of those sort of, oh, this is complete rubbish Aikido, when a video was posted on Facebook. It's not very nice, but you know, they're not the school of people that I'm trying to convince. So, and they don't understand what my purpose is and why I'm training. So, you know, my Aikido wasn't relevant to their journey, and that's fine. But I won't engage in those slanging matches. I think they're an opportunity to practice Aiki, you know, to try and find a bridge between you.
That's right.
So when those occasions have occurred, it's not that I will back off. I will engage. I just won't engage in a negative way. So I'll seek a way to find a bridge. But if they don't want to build a bridge, because it does take two to tango, I'll just say, fine, that's okay, and I'll get on with my daily life. It doesn't, I cease to be upset by that sort of stuff.
But it sounds to me, though, that, you know, you having said that your philosophy that you've had since maybe 10 or before or whenever has, and the fact that it has strengthened and built and become perhaps richer and more subtle, it seems to me that you do feel that there is potential and relevance of Aikido in the world.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
I mean, there's two things to this. Firstly, you've mentioned it, sort of social media and the like. So, you know, it's created incredible opportunities for communication that just never existed. I mean, there you are in New Zealand. Here I am in the UK, and here we are talking like we're in the same room. And those sort of conversations I have with people all over the world, literally all over the world. And that just could not have happened when you and I first started Aikido. So it can be a huge bane, but it's also a huge boon.
Yes.
If used correctly, it's a wonderful, wonderful tool. So I think the opportunity to communicate the message has never been greater. The second thing to say is that Okay, so Aikido is a very powerful way of bringing these principles out into the world. But I think we're kidding ourselves if we think that these principles didn't exist before Aikido.
Mm.
They absolutely did. They're
Yeah,
almost as old as humanity.
sure.
We can trace them back a very long way. And all Aikido was a new way, a new and powerful way of getting those ideas out there. So I think in a modern society where we're increasingly using our bodies less and less, there are more and more of us sitting in front of computers and clicking buttons to make things happen. We've lost our way a bit, and with capitalism too. Well, we must make more and more money, and we don't think about the long-term consequences to the environment and families and all the rest of it. We have lost our way, and I think it's what we have now is an opportunity, and COVID is partly doing this.
Yeah.
It's making people reassess what life is all about.
Yeah.
So we have an opportunity right now to say, well, okay, if you're going to reassess things, we have some tools that are going to really help you get yourselves sorted out. So I am hopeful. I am hopeful. But I think we just need to be creative and find new ways of getting the information out there.
Yeah. Yeah. So do you have any projects in the pipeline that you are willing to share about? Anything you've got on there?
Well, as you know, I started the business dojo, and the idea is to get training into businesses. And I'm afraid COVID has sort of put an end to that for now. So I want to get back into that when we get back to some sort of normality.
Yes.
But I'm currently working on putting together an online course on Aikido and embodied leadership. Right. I don't just mean leadership in business, although it's very relevant to that. Yeah. I mean in families, I mean in dojos, I mean in any organization. We all are leaders at some point in time. Yes. As parents or brothers or friends, or because we are appointed to certain positions in organizations or businesses, helping us to make the most of those opportunities to guide people when they need it effectively, I think is really important. So I'm putting together this online course for something called the Aikido University. And so that's the project I'm currently working on at the moment. It's actually really demanding time-wise. But once you've done it, it's a piece of work that's out there. It's like creating a book or a film. I've done it. Whatever I have to offer at the moment is there, recorded for all time if people care about it. And I hope they do. And I think it's important to do that because I think that what I've got to offer is different to many. Because I don't think I'm bound by the conventions of Aikido. I don't have this hierarchy that I have to kowtow to. I can think my thoughts and I can do things in the way that I think they need to be done. But we'll see. We'll see how it goes when it's done.
Yeah, well, I look forward to that. Let us know when it's when it's ready to launch, and we can have another interview and talk about that. And what is the name of your book?
A Way to Reconcile the World.
A Way to Reconcile the World.
I told you it was my touchstone, so it had to be. I told you it was my touchstone, so it seemed a very appropriate thing to label the book. And I am working on book 2, so if people see this interview and they have stories, please get in touch because I have about half the stories I need for book 2.
Okay, excellent. And where is this book available?
Oh, you'll find it on Amazon. Just search for it. You can buy it from me directly, but it is available on Amazon. Yeah.
Okay. Excellent. And what about Business Dojo? How do people get in touch if they were interested for their businesses?
Well, if you search on the Business Dojo, I suspect it would come up. Or if you search on my name, it will come up.
Right.
People can however they manage to get hold of me, I can always point them in the direction if they didn't find it themselves. I do have the wonderful gift of an unusual name. There aren't too many Quentin Cookes around in the world. I'm not the only one, but there aren't many.
Yeah.
And I'm probably the only one based in Cambridge anyway, so
Okay.
I'm fairly easy to find.
Okay. Well, if yes, on my channel, I'll pop your details under the video anyway.
Fantastic, thank you.
It's been a great pleasure, Quentin, to catch up again and to chat about, you know, you taking Aikido off the mat. And yeah, thank you so much. Any last words? Anything else you want to say to the world?
Well, firstly, thank you. My pleasure. I think you're doing important work here. I think you know, there are many more examples of people who are doing incredible work that will inspire you when you interview them and they tell you their stories.
Yes.
And it's important work. We
Yeah.
all want a more peaceful, positive world where we can meet our be fulfilled and meet our potential, really,
Yeah.
and not have obstacles get in our way. We want fairness, and I think Aikido is a really powerful tool for doing that, or the principles embedded in Aikido are really powerful tools for doing that. So I just encourage people to explore it. Yeah.
Great. Thank you very much, Quentin.
Thanks, Gerald. Been great to talk. Thank you.